Gironlands, Gironzano, Gironzalon.
It's good to see you. What's the situation like there in the UK?
Our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, put us into lockdown on Monday, into a kind of lockdown. To some of us, it seems very informal, and maybe we wish that he could go further, because of course we've been watching the lockdown in Italy. We've been in touch with all our Italian friends, and we've been very struck by the courage and the persistence of the Italian people, staying inside their apartments, only going out to buy essential food, to go to the post office, things like this. We've seen images of deserted streets in Florence and Venice and these great Italian cities. Here, it's not really like that. We still see quite a few people out on the streets. The cars are going past outside my apartment at the moment. A lot of shops are still open, not just the essential food and pharmacy shops. A lot of us are wondering whether really the British people, the measures we're taking are serious enough to stop this virus and to change this situation.
What do the British people think of all this? Do they still think it's something which belongs to to other people, or are they actually afraid of the epidemic?
I think most people are taking it very seriously now. I mean, it's hard for me to say because I haven't really left my apartment since Monday, and I haven't been chatting on the street with people or anything like this. I know all my friends who I've been emailing and messaging are taking it very seriously. I think I read a poll on a website, the Guardian website, I think, which said that 93% of the British people think that this is the right thing to do at this moment. So we're taking it seriously, but at the same time, I still hear work going on, construction work going on in the house, a few doors along from my street. So I think there are still some people who haven't really taken it fully on board yet.
Probably they will. We did the same weeks ago when not all the people were completely aware of the risks of going around and talking to other people and even shaking hands, etc. It's something which has become forbidden now. I mean, we cannot shake hands anymore for the time being. So probably in the long run, or
is that enforced? Is that punishable if a policeman shaking hands? Then
not punishable. I don't think that the police would give you a fine if you shook hands with somebody. But there are very clear instructions on how to behave when you are outside. So people actually have simply stopped shaking hands and talking to one another at a close distance. So probably that will happen in Great Britain quite soon as the epidemic spreads a little more and figures arise. What kind of, I mean, how much did this epidemic, which apparently seemed only a Chinese problem, at least a few months ago, how much did this epidemic change the atmosphere in the UK, on the newspapers or in the media and so on?
Yeah. Well, it's happened very quickly. It's amazing to me to think that 2 weeks ago I was doing a book tour in Austria and Germany. I was promoting my novel Middle England. And it was as if the virus was chasing me and kind of snapping at my heels, because I did a presentation in Vienna, And the next morning, all such presentations were banned in Vienna. I went on by train to the Literature House in Munich, did a presentation there, and it was the last one before the Literature House was closed down. I went to a bookshop in Berlin, and I did the last event before the bookshop was closed down. So it was really that week, which, you know, I have to pinch myself to realize it was only 2 weeks ago that we began to realize, yes, this virus is catching up with us, and these images that we saw on our TV screens of China a couple of months ago, where we just thought, as you say, yes, this is a terrible Chinese problem. Suddenly it became a European problem, and then very quickly after that, it became a British problem. You know, Britain thinks of itself as a little bit semi-detached from Europe, as you know, maybe more than semi-detached now. But really, the day after I got back, which is 13 days ago now, we suddenly began to realize that it was very serious, and events have moved very quickly since then.
And if I may ask, you wrote recently about Great Britain and Europe as it is and as it evolved over the last decades. Does this event change not so much your opinion on what happened, but, you know, the picture of the literary picture of Great Britain and of Europe and of the world, and would that affect your writing in the next future?
I think, yeah, this has made a lot of people wonder whether Brexit is really such a good idea. I mean, a lot of us were wondering that already, but I think even more people. There have been quite a few stories in the newspapers in the last day or two that talking about the EU, the European Union procurement scheme for ventilators, which apparently our government has said they don't want to be a part of because we're not part of Europe anymore. And, you know, a lot of people are finding this a very shocking example of ideology being placed above humanitarian concerns. We've seen images of Italian patients in a serious condition being transported to Germany for treatment. And again, this is a very powerful image of cooperation between the European Union countries. And of course, it's made people very, very aware of our connectedness and the fact that even an island nation like Britain can't just put up its walls and insulate itself from a problem like this. We're all part of the same community. On a practical level, I think it makes, I mean, the government is denying this, but it makes it likely that we will have to ask for an extension to the transition period and maybe, you know, in many technical ways, stay members of the EU for maybe a year or two longer than Boris Johnson and his ministers would have preferred. But at a deeper level than that, a level of the British people's sense of connectedness with their fellow Europeans, then I think it has strengthened that feeling.
Mm. And sorry if I go back to literature. I mean, do you think this event, which is probably the most important event after the Second World War, in the sense of being global, do you think it will affect the literature writers? Do you think they will try to tackle this epidemic in a way in their own say literary works? And would that also interest you, at least as a topic for a novel or for an essay or for something?
Well, we're looking quite a way into the future here, I think, and into a very uncertain future. I mean, it's even impossible to look more than a month or 2 months ahead at the moment. And one of the one of the most disturbing effects of this crisis, I think, is this sense of a fog descending on our futures and not being able to make plans for for the autumn, for the summer, even for later in the spring. We just literally have to live from day to day, and the same holds for writers as well. I think. Of course, this crisis is going to have a profound effect, and that is going to impact upon all literature all over the world in the years to come. But even I, who wrote a very up-to-the-minute novel as best I could with Middle England, tracing what's happened in my own country in the last 8 years or so, even I would find it impossible even to conceive of a novel about the specifics of this situation right at the moment, because we're at I'm afraid to say we're at the very beginning of this crisis probably, and so it's impossible to see how it will pan out. Certainly, everybody is self-isolating, and sales of novels, fiction, not non-fiction, but fiction specifically, has increased by 32% apparently just in the last week. Online sales, obviously, in this country. So a lot of people are turning to books, and I've read many people online saying that they thought that they would sit inside and watch movies and watch TV series, watch box sets, this kind of thing for entertainment. But it would appear that a lot of people are finding that literature, words on the page, that very intense, intimate communion between the individual reader and the individual writer, is actually proving more compelling and more consoling than absorbing stories in other ways. So I think the role of reading is going to be absolutely central in dealing with the weeks and months to come.
So there is a role for literature as a kind of consolation in hard times. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, if we can't meet each other physically, then we have to meet each other virtually. And of course, in modern parlance, for most people, that means being online and having conversations like this over video links and so on. But actually, I've always felt that the most serious and the most profound way of meeting people virtually was by reading a book, by reading the words that they've composed and weighed and thought about and put down on the page. It's still an incredibly direct and powerful way of transposing thought and emotion from one human mind to another, and that's going to be more important than ever.
So even if we have to wait a little while for a new diary of the plague year or the coronavirus year, literature has still something to say, in a way.
Yes, of course, because it's literature is emblematic of, and it conveys, strengthens our sense of connectedness, and that's really what we need at the moment, because we're all, as we're discovering, we're much more closely connected with each other than we thought, and sometimes in ways which are very disturbing and frightening, but also in ways which are consoling and uplifting.
Well, as you know, next week there should have been the literary festival Incroci Civiltà, in which you participated last year as a guest of honor, and we of course cannot do it because of the lockdown and all the problems related to this epidemic crisis. The audience and the public of Incroci Civiltà, of course, is a bit sad because we didn't cancel it, we postponed it, but still we don't know when. And so, is there anything you would like to say to the audience, to the people who came to see you, to see your conversation last year?
Well, I have a very, very fond memory of that event in that beautiful theatre. I was looking at photographs of it on my phone just the other day, and was kind of amazed that it was a year ago already, and that so much and such dramatic things have happened in the last year. So I do have as the people of Venice will have a great feeling of sadness that it's not happening at the moment, but it will happen again. The Italian people, the British people, the people of the world will get through this situation. And as I was saying, they will get through it with a stronger sense, I think, of the importance of literature to our everyday lives. And so, the next edition, whenever it is, will be even better and even stronger, I'm sure.
So in general, and specifically for the festival, we still have to be optimistic.
Yes, of course we have to be optimistic. In a way, we have a moral duty to be optimistic. And the human race is enormously ingenious, and that in itself gives me cause for optimism that we will definitely find ways to beat this problem, even if we won't find them as quickly as we are hoping for in our current state of impatience and isolation. But yes, we will survive, and we will survive stronger and wiser.
So, Jonathan, thank you very much. Long live literature, then, and thank you very much for this wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
Vagano, vagano, vagano!